Estee Lauder Double Wear Stay in Place, the #1 best-selling, paycheck-destroying foundation. Let's talk about it. These are my top tips for this foundation, whether you've purchased it or you're thinking about purchasing it. If you're sure of your Estee Lauder Double Wear Foundation shade, then I've done some comparison shopping, and I found that where I live here in Canada, that it is actually cheapest directly through the Estee Lauder online site. I found it to be a few dollars cheaper than both Sephora and other department stores' prices. Now, if you do choose to purchase through Estee Lauder directly, there are a few things to know. There is almost always a really nice gift with purchase and other specials that are going on with the site. And the very first time you sign up, I think if you sign up for their newsletter, you get around 15% off your first purchase. So that can add up because this is an expensive foundation. Note, however, though, through Estee Lauder's direct site, you can return it. So they allow returns, but you'll have to pay for the shipping out of your own pocket. They don't offer free return labels. This is in contrast, at least in North America or Canada and the US, to Sephora, which offers free returns for things that you don't like when you purchase online. So if you're repurchasing and looking to save a little bit of money, check out Estee Lauder's site directly. By contrast, the worst price that I have ever seen was at an airport duty-free where you would think it might be a little bit less expensive, but they've bumped it up there by a few dollars. You would think it would be cheaper. Maybe it would be with taxes, but they've bumped it up a little bit to compensate, which is something to be aware of. Now, if you're not sure of your shade, maybe you don't want to hear this, but I really think that you should go in person to try it on, and specifically to try it on your face. If you can, set aside some time to go barefaced to the department store or Sephora or wherever they sell Estee Lauder Stay in Place Double Wear Foundation and give it a try on bare skin. And it's not enough even just to try it on and to swatch different shades, but let it dry down completely. This is really essential. I don't mean 1 or 2 minutes. Tell the sales associate that you want to look at it outside and give yourself a good 20 minutes, go get a pretzel at the mall or something like that and come back later. I'd strongly suggest you don't just try them, and while they haven't completely dried, purchasing at that point, I'm going to show you why. So I'm now here by the window and you can see that how different it looks actually, how much darker it is looking in a bit of natural light compared to the way it looked downstairs in a softer indoor light. And you can see it oxidizing. You can have a look there. There's an outer ring, and you can see that is a little bit darker and darkening compared to the middle. You can also see that there's some rosy tones that were not so easily visible downstairs in the indoor light. My other tip is, if you can, go outside and have a look, or at least get near a window and some natural light, because it looks quite different in natural light than it will indoors, in my experience and in my shade, which is 2C3 Fresco, that I'll be showing here. Now, by contrast, you can see it drying down here on my cheek, and if you look from far, it's actually a pretty good color match, and that's in contrast to how it looks on my arm. So that's why I think it's really important to give it a try directly on your skin, on your cheeks, or somewhere like that if you can. Tip 3 is that this is a foundation that really oxidizes. And what that means is that once the oxygen hits it, it sort of changes color. That's why it's so important to try it, preferably on your face before you purchase it, because you want to purchase for your oxidized shade, not the wet shade that comes straight out of the bottle. We're now at the 10-minute mark, and you can see it's half oxidized and half not. The one on the right is drier, and the one on the left is still drying. That's why it's important to wait 20 minutes. Just wanted to give you a view of both of them at the same time. Here it is on my face, and there it is up on my arm. In about 20 minutes, and I've done a fresh smear on the top, and you can see the difference between the colors, right? So that's why it's so vital that you check for your oxidized color. The best analogy I can make is that this foundation is a little bit like paint drying. If you've ever had the experience of painting either the walls or, when you were a kid on a piece of paper, you will remember that the shade that you first stroke it on when it's wet looks different once it dries completely. It's not the same as when you first apply it. Let me show you now on skin. Now, these are much thicker smears, obviously that you would wear, but just for comparison purposes, you'll see it's lighter, then it gets darker when it dries. Tip number 4. Okay, let's say you've purchased it already and you're struggling a little bit to make it work. This is what I think you should do. If you're finding it looks a little dry, try applying your moisturizer and then applying the foundation before the moisturizer has completely dried. So get that moisturizer layer, like a thin layer of your moisturizer on, and then very quickly thereafter go in with your foundation, and also try using your fingers instead of a brush. That moisturizer helps to add a little bit of a slip to putting the foundation on, and it also helps to add a little bit of a glow. You get a much more flawless finish. If you use the moisturizer, don't wait the 20 minutes for it to absorb. Use your fingers to go in right after with a thin layer, and then build some thin layers of foundation on top of it. Tip number 5, it is okay to put this foundation away for your winter months. This might not be the foundation you can wear all year round, so it may be that when it's coldest and driest where you are, you put this one aside and you bring out a more hydrating, more dewy foundation, and then when it's summery and humid again, you pull this one back out. If your climate is like this, windy and snowy, I'm going to say probably this is not your best foundation for this kind of weather. It's okay to skip it and use a different one. All the glow is gone. It looks very matte and very dry. Let me pull you up a bit closer. I would just prefer a much more hydrating version. If you live in a cold climate like I do, somewhere polar, somewhere alpine, you have windy air blowing in your face literally for months, is very dry indoors, this is not the best foundation in my experience. It can look really dry and almost enhances visible lines, dry skin as well. If you're enjoying this video so far, please do drop a like below and consider subscribing. I talk about this foundation on other videos, other beauty products, and other things that you might find fun. On a related note, I just want to say this is a foundation with incredible staying power. It's unmatched. This is me running it underwater. Have a look here. And then, sorry for the angle, I'm using one hand to try and film this, but rubbing it off, it does not come off. Estee Lauder Double Wear Foundation is actually an oil-free formulation. And for me, I find that means it pulls what meager oil is left out of my skin instead. So it's not the best if you have quite dry skin, even if you moisturize. My alternative in the winter months, I go for Revlon's Color Stay Foundation, which I find is very similar to this at a much more affordable price point. I know that in the US, this foundation is around $13, readily available at the drugstore. The shades are not as good as Estee Lauder Double Wear Foundation, which has 55 shades. The Revlon gives a bit more of a dewy finish to the skin. A conversation, warning, tips, whatever you want to call it, would not be complete without number 6, the pump. Let's talk about the lack of a pump provided with Estee Lauder Double Wear Foundation. Now, they could provide a pump, but they don't. You can purchase one that is branded from Estee Lauder, and that costs $16 around that point, which is quite expensive. Straight into the package, it comes with just a screw top. So while Estee Lauder sells one for $16, that's just one pump, it is reusable. I have heard people say that they've had really good luck with Amazon's generic pumps. I can't vouch for any of these, but just know that they exist and you can get either more of them for less money. I've never tried them. I don't have a pump on my bottle. Tip number 7 is how I see a lot of people apply it here on YouTube, and everybody does what works for them. I'm not a makeup artist. I'm just someone with plenty of experience using this particular foundation, but I think that if you have oily skin and you're moisturizing and then you're sunscreening and then you're laying on 1, 2, maybe even 3 thin layers of this foundation, this might be an unpopular opinion, but I think you can actually just skip the moisturizer. If you use a sunscreen that is for the face, it probably already has a lot of sort of moisturizing elements and is already possibly making you look quite dewy on top of the already oily skin. I think on top of that, that is plenty to be able to go on top with just your foundation. So skip the moisturizer if you have oily skin, and then oil control is a problem throughout the day with this particular foundation. Many sunscreens, especially the ones formulated for the face, are already made to be quite hydrating. So I think that that's enough moisturizing elements. Also, and this is just my opinion, but this is a foundation formulated in 1997. So it comes from an era where we did not layer as many skincare products underneath our foundations. In fact, many of us, this is shameful to say, but we didn't wear any face sunscreen and layer foundation on top of it, right? It was sort of one or the other back in the day. You might find that if you have oily skin, it just works best overall if you're not putting so many different layers on your skin. Just put the bare amount necessary, then put foundation on, which in this case would be sunscreen. By contrast, if you're dry and you're struggling with it looking cakey, try bumping up your hydration quite a bit. Add a layer of moisturizer or use your richest facial sunscreen. I like this moisturizer called La Roche-Posay Cicaplast Balm B5. This is very, very thick. And I also like this moisturizer from Nude Sticks, which is called Citrusine Mask and Daily Moisturizer with Yuzu and Turmeric. There's really nothing special about this, although it is nice, thick, rich, and smells to me really nice. It has a nice citrus smell that I really enjoy. If you want something on fragrance, the other one that I just mentioned is probably a safer, better bet for you. Okay, here it is. Final look. You can see I worked it in with fingers, really light, thin layers. I actually use 3 layers typically with this. And you can see it looks pretty good compared to the oxidized part on your arm. So don't be put off by the oxidization. You can still make it work. Don't forget, the skin back here has never seen light. It's got no sun damage. It does not exude any oil, unlike this heavily moisturized face of mine. So the overall effect will be different. If you have dry skin, you really have to amp up the moisturizer and you will get it to glow like this. Sign up for my free newsletter, helenavery.substack.com, where I talk about beauty news and other products I've been enjoying, and some humor essays are thrown in there as well. And be sure to watch my other Estee Lauder Double Wear Foundation videos. Maybe they'll give you a hand and help you make a purchasing decision or help you improve the way that this is working for you, because it's expensive. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.